All right, so we'll open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone could please stand and join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any public comments this evening? That's the next item on the agenda. Anybody care to make any public comments? Okay, all right. So our first order of business is the contract for the town administrator. And I make a motion that we move to approve the town administrator contract for Gregory Johnson, July 23rd, 2017 through June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any conversation or discussion about contract for Greg? Thank you. No? Okay. All those in favor of the contract? Okay.
Congratulations.
All right.
Congratulations.
Now you can sign it. Why not, Chris?
Chris made it second.
Mike Guzzo.
Need a pen?
Mike, you need to sign this as well. Yeah.
Before I go.
Certify that you have money to pay him. On the other one.
Don't they all have to be in a different?
That's everything in copy.
They can, right? Yeah, because it's a joint. Yeah. Yeah.
For all those interested, Greg Johnson is our new town administrator, and he will start in the position on Monday, the 23rd. Welcome, Greg.
What's next Monday? The 23rd?
Okay. So, next up is the FY 2019 board reorganizations. Anybody like to make any motions to start the day?
I'll make a motion that you continue to be our chairman for another year. And my reason being is I think with the change of a TA, I think the continuity and your availability to be at town hall during the week, during business hours will really be critical in moving us forward.
Does anybody second that motion?
I second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, thank you very much for your support and your, what else, what's the other word? Mine's blank. Anyways, thank you, but now a clerk, and Melissa is the clerk today, and she has indicated that she would like to remain the clerk, so I make a motion to nominate Melissa Levine Pirro as the clerk of the Board of Selectmen for the term of July 2018 through June 2019.
Second.
Okay. Any conversation, discussion about Melissa as clerk? Fabulous job with the minutes.
Anytime.
Thanks. All those in favor? Great. All right, we have I didn't see minutes. Did you get the minutes? Did I give you minutes?
Yeah, I have it here.
Okay. So we have minutes for our June 26th, 2018 meeting. And I make a motion that we move to accept and approve the meeting minutes of June 26th, 2018 as shown. Do we have a second?
Nope, second.
Justine? Justine? Thank you. Justine, you're killing me. All these extra letters I gotta write now. Usually just two, now I gotta write four.
Just
All
put
right.
an SJ.
All right,
Pick
so,
T.
all those in favor, anybody have any discussion about the minutes as they are printed and presented to us? No? Okay. All those in favor of the June 26th meetings as, thank you. All right, we have correspondence items tonight. They are A through E. And I make a motion that we move to accept and approve the correspondence items A through E as shown. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Anybody have any conversation about, or questions or concerns about these correspondence items for the week?
I would make a comment relative to the letter we got from the resident on SB Ave pertaining to the water bills and the issues. We are all, I think, well aware of the concern that residents have relative to the impact that our water and sewer rates are having on us all, and we're cognizant. And these types of letters impact me personally, not, I'm paying the bill too, but they make an impact on me because I understand the responsibility that we have as members of the Board of Selectmen and have control over some of these things, and how every single decision that we make here relative to taxes or to water and sewer impacts people outside on the street. And for me, this is the type of letter that makes an impact and makes me reflect on what it is that's so important about what we do here. It's not just approving things left and right, but really thinking about how we're impacting people and people's lives.
Thank you, David. Anybody else? Any questions or concerns about the correspondence items? All those in favor of accepting correspondence A through E? Thank you. Okay. Our consent agenda this evening, again, is A through E. And I make a motion that we move to accept and approve the consent agenda as shown, A through E. For a second, please.
Second.
Okay, anybody have any concerns about those items? The only thing about the items that I would say is thank you to Jim Coleman, Leslie Bryant, and Molly Bergen for their interest in their participation in the planning board.
No, Community Preservation Committee. He's already.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He'd be no, so
He's being appointed
he's
by
being
the planning,
appointed
the
the
planning board representative.
Okay, so, again, thanks, Jim. And then Board of Appeals for both Leslie Bryant and Molly Bergen.
I would just add that one of the consent agenda items is a warrant for the state primaries. The election is scheduled for September 4th, 2018 statewide, just so people are aware.
Okay. All right. Any other conversations or concerns about the consent? All right, all those in favor? All right. So we now have a joint meeting, the Maynard Housing Authority, in the matter of making an appointment. So I guess you have to open your meeting.
We are. We've been in session since 6:30.
Okay.
We are legal. So
Okay.
we appear before you tonight to replace a member who resigned as of the 30th of June, Bill Primiano, who has been a member of the Housing Authority Committee for 27 years. Prior to that, he was a part-time maintenance man for the authority for 11 years before he became deputy chief in Acton and gave that part of it up, and then came back later in 1991 as a board member. So has served in the chairman's position for many years. We're going to miss Bill, but things in life change, and he's decided to step aside at this point. As a result of Chapter 235, which is the latest set of housing authority laws, we have been forced by the Secretary of State not to hold elections. We have not been able to hold elections since 2014 because of some conflicts in the way the law was written. And so in the interim, we come to the position where if somebody leaves, we have to appoint by joint meeting.
Okay.
So we're here before you this evening to present Robert Subic, who is a tenant of Audible Circle,
Okay.
which is a part of the law that is primary to DHCD, that we have a tenant board member. Bob served on the committee prior to Mr. Crenshaw coming on, and he's willing to come back on at this point. So he has experience. He's not new to the thing. We'll be able to hit the ground running. So, any
Okay.
questions? You know the board members well, so we should go through that.
Yeah.
Most of you know Bill Crenshaw.
Yeah.
C. David Hull,
Yeah.
Judy Peterson, George Hardy behind me.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Bob, you should introduce yourself, too.
Oh, Robert Lockman, director. Sorry. Most people know. I don't. Justine probably doesn't. Come on.
So, does anybody have any questions or comments other than, again, thank you very much for volunteering. I know it takes up a lot of time, and we appreciate it, and so does everyone else in town. But does anyone else have any other comments or questions for Mr. Subic?
No, well, keep him back.
Yeah, thank you for
Welcome.
doing it
Yeah,
again.
welcome. Actually,
Yeah.
sing the
I
song.
assume you all endorse.
Yes, we do. We should take a formal vote.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys, I think,
We'll vote with you. They will
Okay.
vote with you, not we. They.
all right, so
Right.
I make a motion that we approve the appointment of Robert Subic to the Maynard Housing Authority.
I second that.
Okay. So all those in favor? Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
That's the most votes anybody ever got in this room so far. I can see. Since I've been here.
And they might break it in a
This
couple
is-
minutes.
This is for you to sign, and then just give it to, if you give it to Stephanie, we'll get it to the clerk. Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't forget to adjourn your meeting, Bob.
We made that motion in there when we were done.
Bill.
And we were adjourned.
Move to
From this
adjourn our
meeting.
meeting.
You already did, it's contingent on the vote.
Contingent on the vote. We covered that before.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. So,
All right, school committee time.
Are we up, Chris?
You guys are up. School committee is up. We only have 2 chairs, but you guys can jam it in.
Don't mind standing.
You can just sort of sit back here.
First order of business, we do have to open our meeting.
Okay.
So, bring
Guess we didn't get the memo on pink and salmon.
Can I
shirts
just say,
tonight.
though, how nice it is to be here and not need money? Can I
Listen, I'm sure you'll slip it in somewhere.
just say? No. It's July. It's July.
Chris, I can tell
That's why
you,
we
in all
didn't-
seriousness, that would be a rogue move on Don Capello's
That's
part.
why
To
we
do what?
And we would probably censor her for
That's why
that.
we didn't.
Yes.
That's why we didn't introduce you guys to Greg, because we
I'm
didn't
due
want
for
to
a
know
good
you yet. But so we'll open your meeting, and then I guess we'll jump right in, and you guys. I guess it'll become kind of your meeting in the sense that
Sure.
you guys.
So I'm
Can we do
officially opening the meeting for this evening. And the purpose of this meeting tonight is to replace a member who resigned on June 22nd. Mary Merch, her husband, took a job in Southborough, and they moved several weeks ago. And we received her official letter of resignation on June 22nd. So per the town charter, we get to appoint a person for a term of approximately a year until the next town elections. So at this point in time, Mr. De Silva, I believe several weeks ago I forwarded you the 2 letters of interest and resumes
Sir.
for Mr. John Larkin and for Mrs. Mara Hogan.
Okay.
So did the members of the respective boards have the opportunity to review the 2 letters of interest and their qualifications?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we have not done it as a group, but we each of us have received them.
Fantastic. So I think at this point in time, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to invite both Mr. Larkin and Mrs. Hogan up to address the members in attendance and just give us the highlights of why they might have submitted their interest, what qualifications they might be bringing to the position, and then we'll proceed from there.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Tonight, when we arrived, there was a letter that was here on my desk, and I don't know was there a deadline for submitting interest? Because there's a letter here from John McNeil, I don't know if John's here, indicating that he wanted to be considered, but perhaps he didn't understand what the process was.
So we put a deadline of June 30th.
No, he's not asking. He's not asking.
Oh, he wasn't asking to be considered?
No.
Oh, okay, he's just giving us, never mind.
Gave me a slight heart palpitation there, David, but that's all right.
I just had a point of clarification. Is it just to fill out the next year, or is it for 2 years that Mary March?
Only until the next annual town
Because it's
election.
changed a little bit since when I did it, because I was in the same position, and it was the
And that-
filling out the full term.
That town election will then fill out the rest of that term. So
Okay.
theoretically, if it's the same person, they fill out the rest of the term, or it could be a new person to fill out the rest of the term, then they run again.
Yeah, that's what I got from Michelle.
No special election.
Michelle told me the same, yeah. She said it would be until May. And then she said something about another year, and I don't know if that's just what's left on the term, but I figured we could deal with that when we get there, so.
The other year would be filled at the next annual, in May, there'll be an election to
Yeah,
fill out that
exactly.
1 year.
Exactly.
What did you do?
I think that's what I did, yeah, when
That
Ken
is,
stepped down.
you finished the last year of that person, I forget who it
So,
was,
yeah,
that
I think
person's
that's what made
term.
it a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
Right, but I finished the 2 years of a 3-year, because I entered the same way.
But you
So
ran,
it's
though.
changed a little bit. Nope,
You got
first time I
appointed?
did not. I was appointed.
Amy
to fill
Gay,
out-
she
Oh,
had
but
the
that
same
was
situation.
It was centuries ago. I know things change.
I know it wasn't recently. Okay.
So you were appointed, Mary, and
I was,
and then
and
you
I-
stayed the next 2
2
years?
years
Okay.
to fill out.
Yeah, the charter,
And then I ran,
yeah.
Are you gonna do one at a time? Obviously, one at a time at the mic, but
Yeah, that
how do you
makes
want?
sense.
Absolutely, that
If that
sounds good to
works.
me.
We want to do one question and answer first, and then the second question and answer and introduction and stuff, and then
That's kind of the map I have.
Okay,
in my brain
yeah, that's
as well.
fine. I just-
So we're on
all
the
right.
same page,
That
Chris.
sounds great.
so it's up to you guys. Who you'd like to have speak first?
Let's go in order of the time at which I received the letters of interest. So Mrs. Hogan, if you'd like to come up, we received her letter first, and then Mr. Larkin, you can follow her.
Okay.
I'm Mara Hogan. I have 3 boys in the school system, 1 in high school, coming into high school, and 2 in Fowler. I live on Thompson Street, and I've had a business here of my own since 2002. And I've been on both the Green Meadow and the Fowler school councils for the last 2 years, and have been part of the Global Task Force and a number of other different initiatives with middle school sports and for the Spanish immersion parents dealing with Dr. Girardi. And that's about it for my background.
Questions from, did we want to do first questions and then have Mr. Larkin approach them up? Or?
Yeah, it might be easier just to do Ms. Hogan first, and then get that. Do that all the way. You can sit. You can see. You can feel. You can be seated.
Sit down.
Yeah, feel free to sit.
Stand the whole time. Might be easier.
So I'm curious, what makes you want to be on the school committee?
Well, I've been very, very involved and just feel like some of the things that I've done with Dr. Girardi and some of the input that I've had, I just feel like I could be a real good asset for the committee. And I'm really interested in trying to kind of bridge the communication between the administration and the teachers and parents. I feel like there's been kind of a lack of that, and I really would like that to kind of have more of a kind of a step sequence. Just kind of see that kind of go through. I'd also like to kind of look at the special education part of like what we do as a school system and how that affects not only the kids that are on the special education, either an IEP or a 504, but more having to do with the kids that don't get on the IEPs or 504s and what happens to those kids. I feel like those kids kind of get lost, and then those parents of those kids end up leaving the system, which I think is detrimental to our whole school district.
I'll keep asking. So, what do you love most about the Maynard school system?
I love that it's small, and that there's, even though we've had some communication problems, that we still do have great communication, that if I feel like there's an issue, I can always go to either Dr. Girardi or Ms. Gaudette or any of the school committee members, and same with the teachers and the principals. I just feel like they're always willing to listen and willing to try and work things out if there is an issue.
What are your thoughts relative to budgetary issues and how the school department should be working with the town and with the school itself in order to resolve some of the budgetary issues that we have as a community, given our size, et cetera? Where do you think that there might be room for movement on either side?
Well, considering that I haven't actually been in that kind of situation, I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like this past year where the Board of Selectmen and the school committee really did have a lot of joint meetings and really worked together. I thought that was really fantastic, and I felt like up until the February meeting that it really, there was a lot of communication between the two committees, but also throughout the school system, at least letting people know kind of what was going on. I did feel like there was a little drop off in February after whatever the numbers were decided upon. I felt like there wasn't enough communication after that, but I felt like it was really good, and I think if we can keep going forward with that kind of joint work along with the FinCom, I think that will, and as long as we're communicating to the rest of the parents and teachers and the rest of the people that live in Maynard, I think that will really help. But really, I think it's, as long as we're talking.
My follow-up to that is sort of a learning experience here. The drop-off that you felt in communication, I assume you're saying that as a parent or as a,
Yes.
A resident, as opposed to something higher level or
Yep.
lower level, whatever. Where did that drop off? Where do you think, in your estimation, where was that failure to communicate? Was it from here, or was it from the school, or was it a combination?
I feel like maybe it was a combination. I feel like we got the information from the school committee about what the percentage was that the Board of Selectmen was willing to give to the school system. But then after that, it just, I didn't feel like until maybe April did we hear kind of what that really meant. And so maybe it was more of a miscommunication of not, the percentage doesn't really mean a whole lot to, somebody that doesn't really work with numbers. But an actual number, I think it was $400 and some odd $1,000 that we needed to cut. So I think that, having a little more communication and how the process of figuring out what we were going to cut would have been good. So,
This will be my last question. I'll let somebody else speak. But are you a regular attender of the school committee meetings?
I am.
Okay.
You're good at tell by the answers.
So Mara, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges of the school district at this point?
Well, certainly the amount of money that we have, and being able to cover all the things that we all would love to do, teachers and parents want to provide for our kids. But the other big thing is the communication, I think, is really needs to be better, and kind of not just put a little bit of information out, and even if you don't have all the information, say you don't have all the information. I think that that's the biggest thing, is that people, if they don't have any information, they dream of things, of all the horrible things that are going on, and I feel like, yeah, and they fill in the blanks, and then, it would be best to just say, this is what we have so far, and once we know more, we will let you know. But, not doing anything is, I think, not great.
Anybody else?
Yeah, unless somebody else has, do you have any questions? What are your thoughts on kids leaving to go to AMSA, kids leaving to go to vocational? And I'm not suggesting in any fashion that those are not appropriate schools for kids to be going to, because vocational schools especially, I think, is extremely important. But what are your thoughts on that happening, and do you think it's something we need to address? And if so, how would you propose to consider possibly addressing it?
Well, I do agree that there are some parents and kids that those tracks definitely are good. But I worry about the kids who aren't getting their needs met here and are leaving to either of those schools or any other school. And it would be nice to know why, and whether or not there's something that we can do to keep them here. I know that when my son was going into 6th grade, 13 kids in his class left to go to AMSA. And I know that the school system did institute or put in place the computer science and the Latin to kind of help. I think that was two of the areas that we kind of were falling behind. And I think that really helped a lot for the coming years. So I think we need to definitely talk to the parents. And I know that Dawn and I think Bethlyn and Mary Branley came together and had kind of a student retention meeting with parents that were planning on leaving a few months ago, and I thought that it really went well with the kind of feedback that parents were willing to give in that type of venue. And I think that we definitely need to do more of that to kind of figure out what we can do, similar to what they put in place with the Latin and the computer science, that if people are leaving or kids are leaving for certain things, if it has to do with, not rigorous enough or too rigorous, I think we definitely need to know that.
I do have other questions, but I don't want to.
Do you guys have questions?
Most of the questions that I was intending to ask have already come from members of your board, so.
Okay.
I'm good right now, but go ahead.
So Mauro, in thinking of joining the board, what do you think would be the things that you would most need to get up to speed on to be effective? And what do you think you have the best handle on in terms of being a board member?
Just be I'm not really sure because I've never been on a board before. So,
It might be normal to say everything, really.
yeah, you know.
From the way you're speaking, the way you've been just describing that, we see you at the meetings.
You're almost at an unfair advantage because we see you at so many of the meetings,
Right.
at FinCom meetings and at Board of Selectmen meetings. So we could dive deeper because I know you've looked at the budget. I know you've sat down with Bob and Michelle and other
Yeah.
people. So, but
Yeah. So, I guess, you know, obviously the rules and regulations of, you know, being on the committee of, you know, who you can talk to at what points in time, like how many of us can be in a meeting, like I don't really know those types of rules. So that, you know, but I do know that that they're in place. So, you know, obviously getting up to speed to that type.
it was a great 8-hour state mandated training that will.
Oh, awesome.
And
I always mention that after.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you can re-educate us, because we're always asking the
Oh,
same
okay.
Yeah.
thing.
It's a very effective 8-hour training.
Yeah, similar to new selectmen training, it's
I'll
8
never
hours.
forget.
So, you know, but just, and being able to work with, you know, some of the other, you know, working with Bob and working with Jen, and I haven't worked at all with Michelle, but, you know, and any of the other little subcommittees, I don't really know anything about those, but, so.
Can I ask my last question?
Absolutely.
And this one's kind of I don't know, maybe it's fair, maybe it's unfair. But as I go around town and speak to people, and I really diverse myself from the school committee as much as I possibly can, and because once we give money to the school committee, it's their money to do what they want to with it. Although I'm interested in what's going on there. Obviously, I've got 2 children myself. But the things I hear mostly, the concern that I hear from the school committee itself, I hear parents and residents complaining about Spanish immersion, and that there's too much influence of school committee members relative to Spanish immersion. You mentioned that you had 2 children in Spanish immersion. How would you be able to, or are you convinced that you would be able to act as a member of the school committee, thinking, and I know you have another child that's going into freshman year, how would you be able to work in a way that makes sure that you look at it from a global perspective so that all of those students are being considered? Because that is one of the biggest issues that I hear on the street from residents about the complaints about the school committee is too much Spanish immersion, too much Spanish immersion, too much Spanish immersion. We need something different.
Right. Well, considering that my oldest is not in Spanish immersion, and so I do have that whole track of, you know, not having any of, you know, the Spanish immersion. So I do know what it's like to be not part of that. And, you know, there are things about our school system that don't have anything to do with Spanish immersion, like the special education. And, you know, we definitely have to deal with, you know, those kids too, even though might be some within the Spanish immersion. I was on the global task force to kind of help. It wasn't just to figure out what the track of the Spanish immersion was. It was also a track on our whole school system and what our language requirements would be throughout the whole, 12 years, or 13 if we include kindergarten. And I felt like those meetings really worked well with open communication. Justine was on that as well. And I felt like we came up with some really good plans for the non-immersion kids and what would be beneficial for all of them. And to kind of bridge that gap between the non-immersion and the immersion kids with bringing in some Spanish into the elementary levels. That was, I think it's K through 5, so that there is that bridge of, the non-immersion kids are still getting the Spanish and are seeing that, the Spanish immersion kids aren't really any different. They're just in a smaller, it's that one cohort going through all the years. So I don't feel like we are any different. And as long as the school committee is able to let, the rest of the parents know that it's not different. It's just, it's not like we're elite, because we're not. We're just like every other parent out there wanting the best for our kids. So.
And then the final point I'll make is not a question, but just really a comment. The other aspect that I hear a lot on the street from people is not only the Spanish immersion, and this helps you in this instance because it's also, we need more representation for the high school. And that previously it was, nobody talks about Green Meadow, and then suddenly everybody's talked about Green Meadow, and then at the high school.
Yeah.
So having a freshman coming in, that certainly benefits you because you'll have that perspective.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, anyone else? Okay.
Thank you, Mara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mara.
Thank you.
Mr. Larkin? You can sit, you can stand. Good evening.
Hi, thank you. My name's John Larkin. I live on Belcombe Lane in Maynard. I have 2 daughters, Ellie and Hannah. Ellie's at Green Meadow. My daughter Hannah does attend AMSA, so she's in AMSA right now. In the 6th grade, she just started. For the past 22 years, I've been leading technology teams and asset management down in Boston. I've grown our current firm from a firm of 20 to a firm of 173, and I've handled all aspects of leadership, team building, budgeting, finance, project planning, prioritization, etc. So my qualifications for leadership are there. In the past, I've worked on the capital planning group for Maynard back in 2005, looking at moving the police station. Around that time, I was part of that. I've developed a couple of spreadsheets that I think are still being used for developing, the impacts of different bond offerings and what it would do to the servicing levels.
Bob McCarthy's famous spreadsheet.
Exactly. Yeah, I helped develop that back in the day. Yep.
So same question. What makes you want to be on the school committee?
For me, it probably all starts with the vision of the school. So all students achieving their full potential in an interconnected world. On Balcombe Lane, we have probably 25 kids, some in high school, all the way down to soon-to-be Tiger Cubs coming in. And I think that achieving that vision is probably a very complex, challenging, and rewarding path. So I think I bring a lot of skills to help us achieve that vision and help us get there.
What do you see that vision as?
What do I see the vision of helping kids achieve their full potential?
What does that look like? So I guess that goes into what do you think is the biggest challenge of Maynard schools at this point?
So I think we're facing some challenges. Definitely the flight of some of the students to the AMSA and the other charter schools, vocational schools. And it seems like we could be caught in a spiral where the more students that leave, the more money they take with them. That makes our value proposition of what we can offer the kids to stay even worse, and then it spurs more growth. So we have to stop that drain of students.
So just as a follow-up to that, having a child who just started at AMSA, what were the driving factors that made you decide that that was a better decision for your child rather than staying in the Maynard system?
Certainly the state rankings, so second best school in the state. Some of the classes that she was attending, my daughter wasn't doing any homework. She was getting straight A's. She wasn't seeming to be challenged or pushed hard enough within the schools. So we've heard good things about AMSA's curriculum and the way they challenge the kids and bring it forward. So that, along with, I think 98% of the kids graduate with advanced placement from there, which I thought was astonishing. So for us, that was the reason why we put her there. But we knew that it was going to be very challenging. We didn't know if it would be right for her. We still don't know if it's all right for her because she's facing new challenges. But we knew we had to take advantage of the opportunity to see if it was right. And we told her, if you want to come back to Maynard, it's on you, but you have to take advantage, at least try this opportunity.
Do you think there's anything Maynard could have done differently that would have had you stay in the system for your daughter?
I think we have to work on the communication and some of the preconceived notions that are out there within the Maynard School District. So, especially within the Fowler School District, there seems to be, there's not enough discipline. There's a lot of preconceived notions or gossip that's going around. Spanish immersion is another one. That the parents who are highly engaged and who are highly involved in their kids are the ones who are putting their kids in the Spanish immersion or taking their kids to AMSA or doing that. And what's left are the kids who aren't getting the support necessary that they might not necessarily need. So I think we really need to focus on what the value of the mainstream education is, and now we're going to address some of the issues that people are worried about.
When you made your opening statement, I think you used the word division. You talked about division in the schools. Can you elaborate on what you see as the divisions in the schools?
I don't remember saying division.
Okay.
Sorry.
Divisional structure, maybe, was it, did you talk about? 'Cause I thought I heard
I
that.
thought you used the word division in describing, that there's too much division. It was kind of the way I took it, but it's not. I misunderstood. But, okay. I may have misunderstood.
Can you done?
Yes, sir.
Can you speak a little bit? I asked Mauro about the budget and what your understanding is of our budget challenges and what your ideas might be relative to making it all work, not only for the school side, but for the town side as well. What thoughts you have on that?
So I think the town spends a lot of money on the schools. It's the biggest line item in the school in the budget. I think that you have to work together, the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, to understand what value that money is bringing, and you have to be open on both sides to know the constraints that the town is facing and some of the other needs of the town, but face it with the where the direction and the vision and what you need to do to bring the schools forward. And then you have to balance all of that. There's a lot of good spending at the schools. I think the Spanish immersion program brings people into the towns. I think better schools bring people in the towns, bring up the residential base, and I think we should focus on that as well. But it's all about understanding the value.
Are you a regular attender of the school committee meetings?
I'm not.
You're not? Okay. And you've sort of addressed my question relative to the Spanish immersion issue, but I am interested in, and I don't want to get into your private issues with your child, but did the issues pertaining to the non-challenging aspect of education begin more at the Fowler School in your experience, or was it all the way through from Green Meadow through? So I'm trying to get to, and if that's the case, how would you presume to address that?
No, I don't think that it started in Green Meadow. I love Green Meadow, and I think it's a great school. They were very supportive of my daughter. Mr. Megan he's just awesome. My daughter still goes back to visit him all the time, and he's great. So creating a very nurturing environment, creating a very supportive environment where my daughters learn to love education and value the education that they're getting. I mean, that's the foundation that was built on. As we looked ahead going into Fowler, and we heard about some of the things that were going on with the kids who were above us, the disciplinary issues, the structure, the change in the administration, some of the challenges that the teachers were facing, we had to make a decision, and we were never thinking of moving for a new school district or anything like that. It was just, there's an opportunity to put your name in the hat for this charter school that has a remarkable reputation, and let's see what happens. And we were lucky enough to get in. And we said, if it's not working out, if it's too challenging or rigid or whatever, we'll pull her out and we'll move her back, because we're not that dissatisfied with the Maynard education.
She's heading into fourth grade? Or you're
I have my younger one's entering the third grade.
third grade?
Yeah.
The one going to AMSA is entering
Seventh.
seventh, okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Committee?
School committee?
I don't think so. Again, kind of covering the gamut. We're good.
I guess I would want to know if, for when you're thinking about engaging with the schools on the level of the school committee, and not just the understanding that you haven't been very involved on a more of that dialogue level in the strategic planning and the prior. I'm just trying to understand how do you see yourself getting up to speed and being involved and understanding the but there's like with the budget, there's just a lot of intricacies that we've been working through, and so I also can appreciate the outside perspective, so I don't want to discount that in any way. I'm just trying to, how do you see yourself kind of getting yourself up to speed and really being able to understand what you need to know to be effective?
Yeah, so I think in my current role right now, I'm tasked with a lot of times sitting down with business units or leaders or what have you, and kind of doing an assessment of their current state and doing an assessment of their future state, and then doing a lot of challenge assessments, opportunities, really doing a really deep dive into what are the different things that are hindering us from getting to our future state, what are the opportunities that we should be leveraging more of in our future state. How do we address those challenges? Is it money? Is it staffing? Is it more efficiencies? Is it better processes? So I've got a lot of experience dealing with that. Some of the exposure that I have just from reading the website materials and things within the school districts is I see visions, I see big grand statements around what we aspire to be. I don't know the operational plans to get there. I don't know what kind of metrics we establish for ourselves to judge whether or not we're on the right path to get there. So that's where I would be challenging the administration of the school to say, I love your vision and I love where you want to get there, but show me how you're going to get there year by year, and show me that the money we spend on these things is moving us in the right direction. So that's where I'd spend most of my time.
I'll make a comment. John asked me to just meet with him, which I've met with a couple of other people that didn't ultimately decide to move forward. Maybe I scared them. But I didn't scare John, but I had dropped off. He had asked for some information, so I dropped it off, and we met last week. And he had some really, really good questions about, really diving into the budget information and that. I'd given him the packet that we all reviewed in February at our big meeting, as well as the information that Michelle Resendez had provided to us. And it was a very quick study and came up with some really good questions that I have to say I could not answer, and I said those are for Michelle. So.
If, for example, Mary was kind enough to explain to me that when students leave to go to AMSA, they bring the per student spending with them, which is great. Not great, but I mean, it's good that kid gets that support, right? But the student enrollment on page 3 or whatever it was, and the student enrollment numbers on page 8 were two completely different numbers, and they were off by about 75 students. And I'm like, if this is the denominator in your per student spending, that needs to be right. And I would guess it is very formulaic, and it's probably some discrepancy between the two. But those are the types of things that I really would like to drill in on and say, if you're reporting the per spending student is 14,500, but when I reverse out your math, I come to 13,700. If we're telling them we're spending 14,500, there's a savings of 700 per student. It's all of those types of things that I would drill in on.
One question I had for you that I wouldn't have for Mrs. Hogan because she doesn't have a student at AMSA is just if you see any conflict of interest. One of the things that we're doing as a school committee on the state level, and I'm working with Senator Eldridge and Kate Hogan and the Marlboro School Committee is, and don't take offense to this, it's just
It's all right.
AMSA, there's a state report you can read, and AMSA doesn't service nearly the right percent of special education students, ELL students. They're allowed to refuse a diabetic student and say they might not have a nurse. So they have a lot of advantages for still being considered a public school with public funds. So I just wanted to let you know that there could be potential conflicts of interest that, but at the end of the day, you can recuse yourself from those. But we're definitely having some issues with that school, and just wanted to sort of throw that out there and let you know. So not a bad thing. It's just that if if our student IEP ratio is 18%, and in some grades up to 25%, and AMSA's is something like 4 to 5%, we are trying to understand those discrepancies at a state level. So just throwing that out there, just to make sure.
And that's a larger dynamic occurring within the public education.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
it's not that it's just us, but
Here.
we're one of the only districts where the charter school isn't just a different school, it's saying, it's billed as an it's, like you said, it's top 2 in the state. It's sort of how people used to think about Maynard, probably before I lived here 20 years ago. If you weren't thrilled with Maynard schools, you moved to Sudbury, you moved to Acton, and what happens now is people move less, but they transfer schools and take that funding, which has nothing to do with you and your family, it's just how the state works. And then we're left having the budgetary discussions about why is the Assabet choice out number so high, and I remember these discussions with Mr. Sweet when he was with us, and why is the charter number school so high? So these are really great conversations, and I encourage anyone to come to school committee meetings regardless, because we have these conversations about the numbers and the choices and the offerings and the paths, and so it makes me excited to start talking all over good things again, but I won't pull a Bob. We can do that in September, but.
So I'd be interested to see where the conflicts of interest could arise. I'm not going to say they won't or couldn't.
No, I'm more, I want to pick your brain all the time.
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, but I will either way.
With my daughter and AMSA, I definitely pay close attention to the way they're structuring their metrics and the way they're setting goals and the way they're doing this and that. And I think that I'll be bringing that to the table to say, well, this is the insights on here, and I sit in on the meetings here.
And we have that relationship also with the Estabergs who came back from AMSA. We have another family coming back this year from AMSA. So it's really interesting to sort of pick up I think a lot of it really is just sort of the right path for your family and how you view different opportunities for your children. I mean, I don't want to keep us here all night, and we all know I couldn't, so. I know, sorry.
Actually, I look at that as an asset for John because he did have 2 kids in the Maynard school system and then one is over at AMSA. So the same thing, we can pick his brain and he'll have the comparison between Maynard Education, which one of his kids is in now, and AMSA, which is to help us, best practices type of thing of how other places that we can improve.
So my question, I guess, Mike, it's not a concern, it's just more of a question, is we talk a lot about numbers, and the 10 of us talk about numbers with town administrator, Dr. Girardi, Michelle, and everybody else. We talk a lot about numbers, but if you start to go to the meetings and you have the meetings come to you, there's a huge realization that it's more than just about the numbers, especially in a small town like Maynard. It's more emotional for a lot of people. It's emotional for parents of students. It's just in the general population that aren't in Spanish immersion. They're not in band. They're not in football. They're not in any of those. They're not in any of those things. They have their own set of concerns. And then you have the parents of special needs students that have concerns, and then the parents of all those other children who are involved in any number of activities. And the emotion of all of those things, and the potential for cuts every year based on, the numbers that we don't bicker about, but the numbers that we're forced to look at every year about, here's where we have to get to level fund, and the numbers here, and we only have this much. So I'm just kind of curious how you will handle and deal with some of the emotion of it. And a lot of the emotion, it's not, it's centers from the parents, but there's also a lot of, in the way that, thanks to my education from the former school committee member who you guys are seeking to replace, my education that she gave me in terms of how Maynard and other towns are treating students differently, a little I would say a little more in tune with children's, not just their education, but their total well-being in the whole child and everything. And that's where the emotion comes from for all these parents that we're talking about. Every you know, every year, every month, every school committee meeting, you have that sense of emotion. I'm just kind of wondering where you fit in and how you would address those issues, because they're every bit as important, and in most cases, a little more overwhelming than the numbers. At least they were for me, walking into school committee meetings for the first time and having the school committee meetings come here and start to educate myself about some of the other things that are going on around town, other than just we can save 300 here or 700 there, or we could save a little more if we did this in that classroom type of stuff. It's more about you know, the kids and their well-being and the emotions of it all for the town. How do you address those type of issues if you're in the meeting, and it's going to come to you when it does?
Yeah, I don't think there's any easy way to handle that. I wish there were a silver bullet that would make everyone feel happy and smiley about every decision that you make. But when you have limited resources and you have to apply them in the best way, it's going to get emotional, and people are going to worry about what they hold dearest and closest to their heart, and it's going to be very specific to their kids. I think it's really important to make sure that what you're deciding to put the resources and efforts behind and what you're not, you're making sure that you're always looking out for the best interests of the kids and the student body as a whole and move things forward. And you be very transparent about your decision making and what went into making that decision and why you ended up on the position that you took. And all the time, if you go into that and make those decisions without reaching out to those constituents and stakeholders and hearing what their concerns are and making them feel listened to, then it's going to get much worse when you have to make those decisions. So the more you do up front, listening and talking to people, and it's talking to the students, it's talking to the parents, the administrators, the teachers, the Board of Selectmen. There are a lot of stakeholders involved, even community who don't have any kids in the school district. They care about the quality of their schools because it's their property value and it's the reputation of their town. So there's a lot of people, and the more you listen to them up front, the more you'll be more attuned to the emotional lightning rods, and you take that into consideration, but you always you keep on the path of the vision that you think is best to get you there, and you be very transparent about it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
I got a quick question. First of all, I want to make a statement because I'm very impressed with your background and what you could bring to the table, obviously. But I do have a question. Any reason why you didn't attend any of the school committee meetings, or if you have any concerns in regards to seeing the school system become a better place for your kids? Is that something that you would think about, you know, maybe taking some time and seeing what's going on?
Yeah, well, for the past few years I've been very busy, and I have been working a lot. In the past year, some of my lieutenants have gotten promoted, so my role at work has come down quite a bit in the past year as I've elevated some lieutenants, and now I'm much more focused on business strategy, so I don't have to manage quite the infrastructure and all the stuff that I used to. So I have a lot more time in this past year. As well as I can tend to be a little introverted, and sometimes the school committee meetings have been a little intimidating to me. I have been to a few.
Come here.
I have been to a couple of these too.
Trust me, this is way, way less intimidating than school committee. Those people are mean.
I hope you're not speaking about the members of our board.
No.
No, we have our moments.
Passionate is the word.
We all have our moments.
So you lived here for 14 years, I believe, right? You said
14 years,
yeah.
yes.
And that's really a nice thing, that you probably could have moved out of this town because of the perception of the school system, because that's what you hear from outside.
Yeah.
And you didn't.
No, I really am proud of Maynard. I work in an asset management company. I work with most of my peers and coworkers live in Wayland and Weston and all the super rich, fancy towns around here. I grew up in Boston. I grew up in Hyde Park. To me, I've always valued the grassroots, the real people that you get in towns like Maynard, and that's what's drawn me here and kept me here. Is that I'd much rather live next to a nurse or a policeman or someone who's honest than someone who's just trying to one-up me on my salary or something like that. So I care about Maynard because I like the people here, and that's why I stay.
Thank you.
Oh, and just to add to that, and putting my realtor hat on, he's actually had 2 properties in Maynard, so he had a smaller house and he chose to upgrade within town. So.
I
do have one other question that kind of came up as we were talking. When you were faced with some preconceived notions and ideas about Fowler and your considerations about for your family what you need to do, which we all, I completely and utterly respect, we all need to make those choices individually for our families and what's best for our families. Did you end up having any conversations with anyone within the district, or how did you handle that? Were you to just try to get a sense of what was going on, or try to rectify what was happening, or, and not that you needed to, but I'm just wondering how you went through that process, and if you ended up, how that went for you, if you did.
My process of choosing AMSA,
I just know we've been asking that anyone that's trying to make that decision at this point, we're saying, please make sure if you can reach out to the...
Yeah, any path, and it's not, I mean, there's homeschool, there's
Right,
charter,
right.
there's out of district,
Yeah.
there's lots of different, but we've been doing a lot of outreach this year to just sort of understand parents and so yeah, just honestly their process, but not about a specific school.
Mm-hmm. But just trying to think if you had been engaging with, if you end up engaging with anyone to try to get clear on what the path forward could be in relation to the schools themselves.
Well, we were already in the Maynard schools, so
Yep.
we knew it was there. For us, the choice to go to AMSA wasn't like a permanent switch. It was an opportunity. It's a lottery. You just kind of put your name in the hat.
Yeah.
We were on a wait list, and then literally the day before the school started, we had to make the choice of, she got on, and they said, would she like to come tomorrow? She doesn't have to worry about the uniform, but she can come. And it was a very fast decision around. And when we found out that she probably wasn't going to be going to AMSA, we were fine with that too. And we said, we'll just, it's all about getting her the right education and getting her the opportunities that are going to allow her to be most successful and that are right for her. It doesn't mean she needs to be at the most challenging school if that might not be the way she learns, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
All we knew was Fowler, and all we knew was the Maynards, and this seemed like an opportunity to try something different. And we were lucky because it seems to be working, and she seems to enjoy it.
That's great. I'm glad to hear
And
that.
I think I'm going to follow up and clarify, because I think Bethlehem was getting more to, prior to making the difficult choice to send your daughter to AMSA, and understanding that it was a rapid process for you, did you engage any of the district level leadership to perhaps gain additional insight or address some of those, you called them preconceived notions about the difficulties that Fowler was facing at the time? Did you engage like Dr. Girardi or Ms. Godin?
No, not with any of the leadership. I mean, I talked to Mary at parties and things about this. You can't go to a cocktail party or a barbecue in Maynard without talking about the school districts.
Sure.
And you can't do it without getting the opinions of teachers and parents and teacher and but the administrators, I haven't talked to Dr. Girardi.
Just curious because, I think as Don was trying to hint at and Bethlehem was starting to touch on, we are working really diligently to engage with the parents that are in the process of possibly making that decision, so that we can identify what their decision drivers might be and if there's anything that we could be doing better that might encourage our families to stay. So that's why we're picking your brain on that one just a little bit tonight. So.
My advice would be to really focus in on the Fowler School right now. I mean, that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade district is really where parents are making those decisions to switch because they've had a really good experience at Green Meadow. They've been nurtured. They value the education. Then you go into the Fowler schools, and they're teenagers. Things are changing, and we have.
So that's for sure.
And
And we heard parents on that, and I really don't want to take up the whole meeting. Right. But we did recently make some changes at that building to the administrative structure and the work and that I'd love to just sort of talk about offline and not, But we have heard that over the past couple of years especially. So it's exciting to hear that we're not far off in what people are looking for and that changes are happening. But there's always still more work to be done. So.
Yeah, and I guess I was just trying to get at what paths you might use to reach out and trying to do that before you get to the point of making the decision so that we can be clear on what the options are and making sure that we're saying that moving forward, but also just understanding what may have been. Because if you're looking to reach out to stakeholders and making sure that you're having those conversations, it's just that's something we want to make sure is happening as a general, as a board. So, and building that communication from person to person.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
So in the
Yeah.
past,
Yeah,
I guess at
go
this
ahead.
point-
That's the point. This is
Yeah,
where
so,
we-
I mean,
You know, I'm happy to make a motion to get the discussion started. You know, I remember the days where we used to literally have to sort of drag people to run for office, and now it's great that we actually have more members. Personally, I'd make a motion to appoint Mara Hogan only because I feel like she can step in quicker, but I would love to see John on the board at the very next available one. That's not my choice, obviously. But you have a lot of great things to add as well. I just think that Mara has just done a lot of legwork. I mean, she's been picking my brain about the budget at Pickup for 4 years. I did not ask her to run. I was just pleasantly surprised that she might join from being in the audience every other Thursday to being on the other side, because you can see how much fun that is.
the view is so much better from the other side of the table.
So my motion would be to appoint Mara Hogan until May, and that's just to get the discussion going.
Second that motion.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate John Larkin. He hasn't been at the meetings and that, but as you can see, he's very bright, not to take away from Mara, because she is too. But what I like about John is that, and I just mentioned it, by having a child at Amster and also at Maynard, I look at that as something that we can learn from, that we can, kind of pick his brain. I know we've always picked Ken's brain in that, but just, I really like when we have people that have, similar to Mary Murch, we were fortunate because she was a teacher at a private school system, and what she brought to the table from that was great. And I see someone like John being able to do the same with Amster, that we're constantly, trying to figure out how to keep the kids and what we can do to better improve ourselves. And I also, the other piece that I like is that, for me personally, I'm always looking at what do we want our students to, what are the skills and the tools that we want them to have as seniors in high school when they leave here, that they can be successful adults, whether they go on to continuing ed or, we hear so much about business leaders saying that the students, the kids that young adults, don't have the tools to be successful in the business world. And I look at somebody like John as he obviously does that in his current job, and I think he could really help us create that great benchmark for our students to be really, really successful and competitive.
So rather than having two motions on the table at the same time, can we this is up to Dawn, because she made the motion, withdraw that motion and instead have a discussion about the candidates themselves and who everybody thinks, and then we'll get a sense of where we're headed. And then we'll get a sense of where we're headed, and we can have just one. So both names are on the table for
I was wondering how
discussion.
we were going to address two motions on the floor.
Both names can be on,
My motion is absolutely.
Your energy
and
just
that
gets
way we can just see where the sense of the group is, and then we'll.
I only spoke because no one spoke, so, I'm Italian, I can't let that.
Mary, do you want to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I will do the same thing.
Well, that was never seconded, so there's never an issue.
Right, neither one of them were, I guess.
It's all good.
My thoughts are, and I'll be honest, when I came tonight, because of the feedback I was getting from people on the street and through email and whatever, was this whole Spanish immersion issue. And also the high school. We need somebody with focus on the high school. Now, whether or not that's true, false, or whatever, that's where what I'm getting for feedback is the concern about school committee and the makeup of the school committee, et cetera. But having listened to both candidates, I agree with a lot with what Mary said about John's qualifications and John's strengths. But I think I fall more on Dawn's area relative to attendance at meetings and ability to pick up where things are. But I do think that the town, and in some ways it's disappointing because you see all this social media where people complain, and then an opportunity comes up and the people that are complaining don't show up.
Or
And
run for office.
or run, yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about, is, here's an opportunity to be appointed. So, I know people have lives to live, and, they're not nerds like me and Chris, and spend our lives here at Town Hall. But, so in that way, I'm a little bit disappointed with what we've got. I think we've got two great opportunities here that if one of them were here and one of them weren't, we'd have a good opportunity either way. But I think I'm leaning towards Mauro because of the activity, the initiative that she showed before tonight to get involved and to be participating in whatever. And but I think I'm going to have some people angry at me for saying, why'd you go with the Spanish immersion parent? We don't need Spanish immersion, because that really is, and I know that that's disappointing to you guys, because
I know that you hear a lot about it, but this idea of continuously addressing it continues the divisiveness. The reality is that it's a unique opportunity within our district, much like WAVM just receiving Chapter 74 approval, and suddenly we're going to have a licensed vocational program at the high school with certificate-based programming. So I really just want to bring it back to the idea of, okay, I don't want to talk about one candidate coming from the Spanish immersion side and one not. Let's talk about the whole student and which of these candidates is going to be best for all of our students. So let's, if we could, I don't want to buy into this idea that there's one cohort and then everybody else. The reality is all of the kids at Maynard are our kids, whether they're in a program or not in a program.
Yeah, my comment was not meant to be offensive in any way. It
No,
was
I'm
more or
not
less
taking
just,
it offensively. I'm just saying I don't want to continue this idea of an us and them, because that's not what it's all about.
then maybe there needs to be a better sales pitch by the schools as to how it works, because the parents out there are seeing it as an us and them.
Okay.
But again, it's not meant to be argumentative. It's just
You're reporting what you're hearing, you're right.
No, I get what you're saying. It's a vein that's out there in discussion and dialogue and conversation that.
And I think it's within the faculty as well. I think that there's some frustration that I hear from members of the faculty that have the same type of comments. So to ignore it and to pretend like it doesn't exist, Justin, is somewhat,
I'm not sitting here with my head in the sand, David. That's not the intent that I'm getting at. But I'm coming back to the idea of every single student, regardless of the program.
And I appreciate that.
Are our kids, and let's talk about the merits
Yep.
of the candidate, not necessarily their affiliations.
Yep, got it.
I have to agree. I think it is
you're making a
crazy
good- yeah.
that we would put these candidates in
Yeah.
a vote just because of what program at the school their child is in, and that's not what this is about. Personally, I think that this school committee, given the situation the town is in, has to go to the candidate that has the most experience and has been involved in this town and can jump in running. I also see a potential conflict of interest down the line with John. I really think the school committee needs to get involved at a state level and try to stop the whole charter schools being above the law and taking money away. Like,
Self-selecting
no
your
offense, but every student that goes, that's $14,000 out of this district. Like, and I just see a conflict if you have a child in the charter schools, and I know that's the best decision for your family, and maybe I would have made the same if I was in your shoes, but that's the direct effect on our budget in this town, and it needs to be addressed. So, I mean, my feelings go with Mauro. I mean, she's been involved. I don't know either candidate personally, but I recognize Mauro. I see her at events. I see her at meetings. She's been involved. She's done her time. She knows her issues, and I think she can help propel the school committee and the Board of Selectmen forward, working together, and really help this town out, and I hope she'd continue to run again after May.
I think she yelled at me once.
Even better. You got my vote.
That's a large club though, Chris, honestly.
There's a line outside.
Until you get yelled at a meeting.
Anyways, no.
You can get her back. She'll be, if she's on school committee. I mean, there's always a line.
We'll see, we'll see.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
First of all, I totally agree with you, Justin. I mean, you're making an excellent point.
Thank you.
When I first came tonight, looking at the resumes and reading all the material, I was set with Mauro, and then listening to her, that she could hit the ground running easily, very easily. But then listening to John, I'm saying, what a perspective could he bring to the table, and what he could add to the committee to elevate the committee, to make the committee even more powerful. Yes, I understand there's a conflict of interest with, having a child in NASA and all that, but that could be a benefit, that could be a plus. And I think that could bring the perspective, not only from his business background, because he's just unbelievable what he could do from that perspective, but also the fact that he could compare and say, okay, so how can we make our schools better? How can we elevate our schools so that we don't have to go through losing our students to AMSA? So that's just my 2 cents.
Me? Go for it. So, I don't know what to say. Thank you both. Obviously, thank you
That's
both
for sure.
for stepping up. We really appreciate
absolutely.
it. I will say I've served on a board with Mauro. Actually, she yelled at me too, but she apologized the next day. So that's an even better thing.
Oh, I didn't get the apology.
So there.
Wow. We see how it is now.
I will say that. So I do hear, and I understand I understand the perceived divisiveness. I obviously hear it because I am in the schools all the time as well. But I think that Mauro, in addition to she's so much more, and that's what I'm trying to get at is, and I know that's what you're trying to say, Justin, is she is so much more than the parent that has 2 kids in the immersion program. She's also someone who has been on school council and has been on, the Green Meadow School Council, and who has been global competency, and who now has a student going to the high school. And when you're looking at the makeup of the board, yes, you are going to have another parent that has Spanish immersion children on, if she's voted in, but you will also have a parent whose child's going into high school, and that's a demographic you guys don't have right now.
We've heard it frequently. Yes.
So
That's the same point that
Yeah.
she's doing a much better job of saying.
And David, I did not intend to start an argument with you because we agree on a lot of different levels. It's unfortunate.
So, to echo Justine's sentiments, thank you both for your interest in this position. And I would hope that, regardless of who the 2 boards select together tonight, that the other person is, either remains or gets involved in the process with the schools.
yeah.
But just one quick point, and I'm not going to argue about it either. To David's point, it's difficult if you put yourself in the position, Justin, as some of us are in, of hearing different things, because you have a candidate that the first candidate that spoke tonight absolutely positively put herself in this immersion block, and the second candidate absolutely positively put himself outside of it in the other block. So when we talk about divisiveness, well, they create the divisiveness. So that's where David's, I think where David came from, was that you had, each candidate had a place where they, kind of put themselves. We didn't put anyone there. So by their own words, put them there. And that happens in this town, and it's a small town, and everybody knows where everybody stands on most anything. But I will say that you're not actually having met Mauro. I know I've seen her at hundreds of school committee meetings and other types of meetings around town. I can appreciate the large amounts of time and energy and effort she's put into these things, and I think that at least as far as I'm concerned, that carries some weight when it comes to decide where someone should be every other Tuesday or Thursday night. It's just when you see people that are out there and you see people that are taking part, it's definitely adds to their resume and their interest. So I would think that for my choice, I would tend to lean towards Mauro in this case. Anybody else? Anybody from the school committee want to speak up? You've been awful quiet, Bethany.
To be honest, just addressing the room, I would like to echo the sentiment. I think, Armand, you started it. We're in a really good position that we have 2 extremely qualified candidates that I'd be more than willing to sit at a table with and work school business with. And I would also like to echo the sentiments of that in the future, whichever of the interested parties does not, move forward tonight, that they do continue to come out to the meetings and become involved and find their niche, and possibly even put their name into consideration at a next town election, because it's a really good problem to have tonight, to have 2 exceptional candidates that are interested in filling this seat for the next year.
Certainly is.
Yes.
So.
So I guess I have been, going into my 4th year of being on the school committee. As time flies when you're having fun. I first obviously so grateful that you're both here. I feel my limitations. Like, I feel like you get to a point where it's like that I can bring what I can to the table, but then there's still, as we're saying, there's different, everyone's very emotional, has different perspectives that create the full picture when we all come together. But there's still different perspectives, and trying to take those all into account, I think, is one of the hardest things that we do, because I want everyone to feel like they have been heard, and know that we are trying to take that into account. I honestly did not know what I was going to do before coming here tonight, because I feel like there is this notion about things like having representation where we are lacking it, and that being an important piece of the picture, and I fully recognize that. And that's an important consideration to me at this point. The other side of it, though, is that I feel like where we are right now through to May, being able to have someone that is able to jump in and understand the larger perspective and has the full picture of the spectrum of the schools and where we are at right now, I feel like we have some good insider understanding at this point of the AMSA situation, what we could be doing differently, and are looking at ways to continue to address that. So for me, until May, I feel like having, I would think the person that is able to really jump in and understand some of the complexity and layers of what we're dealing with and navigate that and be able to help us move forward as a town, because there are so many considerations on the budget side, as David is talking about, and that's driving a lot of what we're trying to figure out together. And there's all these values, right? So I would say until May, I would like someone in that position that is going to be able to jump in and already understands the workings and is already willing to do that and able to do that work. And then I'd love to see John, I'm going to say obviously names will be Morrow, and then John being able to start getting up to speed and then put your name on the ballot in May, because I do think we need to look at having more representation. I think we need to look at making sure that we're really bringing in as many perspectives as we can. And so you throwing your hat in the ring is awesome in allowing us to continue to be a representative and diverse board. So for tonight, I think I would vote for Morrow. Strongly asking John to continue to be involved and get up to speed and be on the ballot.
I guess I just want to make a comment, challenge that a little bit, because what I would like, the great thing about having somebody brand new come on is that, and I know I fall into it myself sometimes, when you feel like you already know a lot, then you may not have the same questions. Like I said, just sitting with John for an hour, and he came up with a few things that I was like, haven't thought about that before. So sometimes having that very new perspective of, have we thought about this, or have we thought about that, that's something that has huge value also coming on board. So, and like I say, they're both incredible. We're very, very fortunate to have two really, really good candidates. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Now it might be time for a motion.
I'll nominate Morrow Hogan to fill the role of the Open School Committee seat until the May 2019 election.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded.
Can we make another
Discussion.
motion, or do we?
So it's a discussion and then a vote, and then.
The vote fails, then
Oh, I
there
see.
can be another
Okay.
motion.
All right.
Are we making separate motion or same motion, Andrew? Do we need to make our own motion?
It seemed that you guys made one motion with the Housing Authority.
Yeah,
that
so
both
it's all the
boards
same
voted
motion?
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
The motion. I don't think that's inappropriate.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
Does anybody have any discussion about that motion?
I just appreciate everyone's input. I think it's very helpful to.
Well, it's an important decision. As I mentioned, a lot of people have spoken to me, reached out to me via email, and it's something that people were aware of and are concerned about, because obviously it's important to our community. And to Mary's point about John having thoughts and ideas, John, go to the meetings and speak, and assuming that you don't get the votes here, and become part of that, and bring your ideas to the school committee, because I'm sure they're open to.
David, you said that the environment can sometimes be intimidating. If you don't feel comfortable coming out and voicing your concerns, we get emails on a daily and monthly basis that we then build into our planning for the meeting and some of the decision-making process. So please feel free, now that you have some faces that go with names, to reach out also.
Well, I think
Anybody else? You want to call for a vote?
Sure. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. The motion passes. 7-2. 7-2.
congratulations, Mara.
Congratulations. Thank you, John, again for your interest. And
Procedurally, do we have to sign off on anything?
yeah, we have a appointment slip here.
Must have to get sworn in by the
Yeah,
town
your
clerk.
town clerk will swear you in. So we can sign this and we'll give it to you guys to sign. And then we have to start thinking about when you're gonna start budget meetings, like.
Like now.
Yeah,
right
feel
there.
free to set
Well,
up,
I wanna wait for you five.
So
We
we
have to figure out who's
Yeah,
going to
so Chris, here's the situation. We meet next Thursday night when we reorganize ourselves and appoint a new chair and vice chair, and also start the conversation on subcommittees. Once our subcommittees are appointed, I think it's a great opportunity to start the conversation and start getting some tentative meetings on the schedule.
Yeah, last year we started right around this time.
Right.
I think you're right,
So
yeah.
you guys might want to decide who you want on the subcommittee. Reach out to you.
Because I think our first triad meeting was in November last year, so.
oh, we can do
No, it
that
was
earlier
earlier
than
than-
us.
No, we need to do it.
No, we met as,
We need to do it earlier.
The subcommittee met in like September.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I meant our FinCom,
Yeah.
BOS,
Yeah.
and
So we have a couple items on our agenda, and when we get to them, just reading them tonight, I'm gonna ask the five of us to push them back till Becky's here and Greg is here next week.
Yeah.
So all of us are involved in it, it's our scheduling and it's some other stuff, so we'll get that done, and then we'll get it, and once you guys are settled, we'll get it together with, the last time we did it with the chairs, the TA, Dr. Girardi, and your chair.
Yeah.
So we'll do that again, and then set up the schedule, but I think it's important to start it earlier rather than later, so.
Sounds fantastic.
Every year we start a little early, we end up a little better off in some sense.
The new thing is every season is budget season now.
Yeah, there's no, it doesn't take a break. It does not take a break, the budget. So, congratulations.
So we do need to close, so.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn? Second. Okay, all in favor? All right, we're adjourned.
Don, you have no idea what
Thank
you're
you.
voting on.
We have to point it out.
What are we pointing at?
I raised my hand, I wasn't 100% sure what I was doing. Sorry.
It was closing the meeting.
Thank you guys, I'm sorry we took up so much time.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, can we do scholarship next so I can leave?
Oh,
All right,
Is that
I'm
next?
all
tired.
right, Mary, you're
Oh,
next.
good. Oh, good.
What are you guys leaving?
Yeah.
Typical.
We're taking the talking to people out of the room so you can get your business done now.
I was the last guy out of Fowler School last time I went to a meeting.
Talk to
I
you.
shut the door, I shut the lights off on the way out.
Okay, so I was hoping that, thank goodness the town meeting approved the excise tax scholarship money back in May, and I thought rather than wait until the spring, if we could put a policy or a procedure in place so that when the Maynard High School Scholarship Committee meets again in the spring to start figuring out which students are going to receive which scholarships, that we'd have something in place. Just to let you know, as of July 1st, the excise tax donations that came in for the Maynard High School Scholarship was $6,085.
$6,000.
$85. It was an amazing outpouring. When I tell you that there were college students that donated, there were elderly people, there were people that don't even live in Maynard anymore that saw, because we also had the ad in the Action Unlimited, that also sent money on behalf of the kids. So it was pretty cool. So now that it's going to be an annual event, thanks to Cheryl, town treasurer. That would be great. Did you guys, by the way, did you give Madeline her scholarship tonight? I thought that was on the agenda.
Because she was, well, no,
Is she
they
not?
don't have, Cheryl doesn't have all the paperwork.
Oh.
And so there's no check and there's no anything.
It's for the Board of Selectmen's one.
No, I know, but there's
Oh.
there's nothing to give her because she has to fill out all the paperwork.
Oh, all right, I'll let her know.
So I think she
Okay.
has to do all that, and I think I thought they gave it to her, huh?
I think they sent directly to schools.
If they did, they would have sent it, but I,
Okay,
so we
all
put it
right.
up
So I can follow up
They
with
didn't have a
her.
check to give her, and there was nothing there.
Because I know the money's in the
I
account.
blank envelope, but I give an empty envelope with a note, an IOU, but, no,
All right,
we're
I
just
will-
gonna, once we have everything in order, we'll do it.
Sounds good. I'll
It
follow
depends
up
on
with
the
Cheryl.
schools.
It's atypical, but we'll do it. She's gonna be gone to college by the time, she's gonna be spending it, but,
So,
what do you want us to do, Mary?
I think so. So according, I had sent Andrew the info, which I'm sure he's passed along to everybody, about the actual language of the article that was passed. But, so there's a few different options that you could do. According to the article, the selectmen can put together your own scholarship committee to review all of the student resumes and essays that we receive from the high school seniors and make decisions as to the distribution of the funds. Or there is already a Maynard High School Scholarship Committee in place. There are 6 of us, and we also have the principal of the high school, Mr. Karajanis, and then also one of the guidance counselors that are also part of our committee, that we could actually continue the same process that we do now, which is we select the students that are going to receive the different funds. Or you could have us do our regular process of deciding which students we think best should receive these funds, but send them to you for your final approval. We could send you their resumes and their essays. So right now what happens is the seniors in February, I think it is, they receive instructions to put together an essay and also sort of a resume of what they've done in the high school. And then the essay just talks about them, talks about any challenges that they've had, talks about what they hope to do when they graduate from high school and that. And based on that, the other scholarships that we are in charge of, some of them actually have criteria. It's a student that's been really involved in WAVM, another one that's done a lot of community service, another one who is going into engineering. So it can be as specific or unspecific as we want. And what we do is we start off by fulfilling the needs of the sponsors if they have specific directions that they want the scholarship money to go to, and then the balance of the students that we have, we try and spread the wealth basically of the money. And when I say spread the wealth, it's some of the students might receive $300, but to be honest with you, in a way it's more the acknowledgement. We're not going to cover anybody's tuition, but it's more, I wish, but it's more a case of just making them feel like they've accomplished something and that we're acknowledging them in that. So my preference would be the first, which is to, the scholarship committee has been in existence now for I think 7 or 8 years. We were actually delegated by Laura Chesson, the principal of the high school at the time, because I guess previous to that, there were a group of teachers that would figure out which monies went to what students, and there was a, not an arm's length type of relationship. So she asked a number of us that, none of us even have kids in the school system anymore. And so we just get together, have 3 or 4 meetings in the spring, and really, I think we do a really good job. It seems like, everybody's always happy with the decisions that we make. So that would be my.
I would support leaving it with the group that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Does that sound
fine.
okay?
It wouldn't be a bad thing for us to see the resumes.
I was just going to say that, yeah. And I could send you who the names are, who the students are, if that would be good for you.
Personally, the only one that I care who they get is the one that comes from us. That's the one I want to see who got it, because then it's But other than those, I see it at graduation.
Right, so the criteria is, as far as right now, they just have to be a resident of Maynard, because we do have some of the kids that school choice in. I know we ran into that this year with a couple of them that we were trying to do. But I think other than that, is it pretty generic, just leave it to us type of thing?
Yeah, there
Would
was
you
a
be
question
comfortable
asked
with
at
that?
town meeting because of the fact that it's money coming through a tax bill, that every Maynard student should be eligible, including students from Assabet. Is that something that's going to be addressed?
You could direct us if you'd like to do it that way. I think
There would be one scholarship for a student from Assabet or something along those lines.
or we could incorporate those students into, the total in that too, to make sure that they receive something.
And I don't know how
something
it applies to
from this.
AMSA.
Yeah, I don't either, actually. We haven't had that because they're not up there yet.
Yeah.
So that's a really good thought. So that might be something you might want to think about to, if you're, to put that criteria. And the other thought is that you can actually leave a certain percentage as a reserve every year if you chose to do that too. Every year, like I say, this year we received $6,085. So you could choose every year to keep like $1,000 to carry over or something like that. Some of the funds that have been created by people who have passed away, that's what they did. Of course, the idea was that it was going to make money with, the interest rate. Chuckle,
Yeah.
chuckle. Yes. That doesn't happen anymore.
Give it time.
I know, really. Yeah, give it time. We won't live this long.
Paid his excise tax, but maybe there's a windfall coming for you. I don't know.
Oh, so that's something for you to think about too, if you wanted to go that route.
So, and I'm obviously new to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So say you did $5,000, would that go to one student, or is it, if it's broken up into?
Pretty much the way it's, for instance, TD Wealth. We have monies that, and I don't even know where the money originally came from. It came from someone a long time ago. And every year we receive a certain amount that can be distributed. And we use that money actually to spread the wealth. So we're better off not to have denominations, because that way it makes it easier for us to, those students that might not have the greatest GPA, but they're going on to continuing it, at least we can, send them $300 or something like that. So ideally we'd prefer not to have it designated by denominations, if you're okay with that.
So each year, the one scholarship may have a different dollar amount the next year.
Yes. So, if, for instance, this $6,000, if we were to have used it this year, it might have been $300 times 18 students, for instance, that we might have done, or we might have done 12 of 500, or 12 of 500.
There are some scholarships that your committee doesn't have any involvement.
It's exactly right. There's a lot of them, actually. Orchid Technology, even the ones at the high school, Maynard Music Association. There's quite, but then there's other ones like Acacia has been really, really generous. They've been giving us 2 $5,000 scholarships. Actually, plus they give 2 $1,000 scholarships under the heading of the Maynard Police Department. They've been doing that now for about 3 or 4 years. And they basically say, they want students, so that's an example of, they want students that are going on to STEM-related careers.
Just like MMA,
So
there's the...
there's quite a number of them when I think about it. The Rotary Club used to, they're not
Football
giving
ones,
now.
some
That's
of the
right,
football
they choose
ones,
those.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the directive is for us to make the decisions.
Or a motion?
Um,
No,
Motion's not required.
Okay.
not
Okay,
required.
so you guys move.
And for right now, we'll
I guess we
use,
can talk about in the spring or early next year, if there's a percentage that you guys want to leave in.
Okay.
You guys can make that suggestion or not.
okay, all right. And I will say that even sometimes with some of the monies that are sent to us, like I'm thinking the TD Wealth, sometimes we don't necessarily use every penny of it. So, sometimes we do that on our own too, just to carry it over.
The other question that I would have would be, and not that I question anybody that's on the committee, but when there's town money involved, typically they ask that it be appointed by the board. So
Right.
maybe, and Andrew, that might be something we need to look into. Does that committee need to be assigned by the board specifically with names?
Right.
'Cause there might even be a bonding issue involved and everything else.
Right. We kind of prefer, like, I'm sort of the face. The
Yeah.
other members, we prefer to kind of keep it under the radar, just because Maynard's small and
So do
people
you sign the
can-
checks?
No, I don't know. Cheryl signs. We just make the decisions.
So all you do is make the decisions and hand it over? Okay.
Right, yeah.
All right.
No.
Maybe then there's no requirement for
We're
that.
signing the warrant, so
Yeah. Maybe there's no requirement for it.
Yeah.
But that might be something to look
we'll
into.
verify.
Okay, so we'll talk again in the spring, and at the very least, I can, make you guys aware of who the recipients are, and then we can figure out about leaving a certain percentage in that. So, but the classes are getting bigger, so if we can spend all the money, I'd prefer to do that. And I'm just hoping that it continues with the same, same level of support, because I was pretty amazed that, very excited that it, yeah, it was a lot of money. So, all right, we good?
Thank you.
Now I can go home.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks, you guys.
So, I don't know if how anybody else feels, but I was gonna suggest that we do the meeting calendar, liaisons, and the 2019 initiative special meeting. Do we hold off on those three till our next meeting, at which Greg will officially be a participant?
Yeah, makes sense.
And Becky will be back, and it also gives everybody a chance to look at the meeting calendar that's proposed as of now, and if anybody has, vacations or other things like I know I have a wedding in October that I have to go to and all that, so if anybody has dates that they might want to change and that we all would agree would be okay, we could look at it that way, and at the next meeting, we could come back and discuss those three things and get them done at our next meeting, if anybody doesn't object.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a note about 3 dates that are on the proposed calendar.
Yeah,
September the 4th, November the 6th, and May the 7th.
right.
Are all election days, and we're advised to not hold board meetings on those nights.
Right.
So you may want to choose a different night the same week, or postpone it, but as you're looking at this, to consider those 3 dates.
May 5th, you said?
May 7th.
May
7th.
Yeah, the three.
Okay.
There's too much going on here, and plus
Yeah,
then election workers theoretically can't attend meetings, which is the
You're
original.
not eligible to vote because you're stuck in this room, something
Okay.
like that.
So is that okay with everybody? Just take a look at the calendars and stuff, and then
Okay with it.
we'll work with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Armand and Justine can decide which committees they want to take from us, and, run with a couple committees.
There you go.
All that? Okay. So we'll do that next week, and we'll just make a note for Becky to put them on the next one.
Just so you know, you do not have to attend every meeting. It's like if you're in
I wasn't planning on
Yeah.
it.
don't,
Oh, every meeting of the liaison.
of the
Yeah,
liaison.
okay.
That's what I mean, not this
You're a
meeting.
liaison, you
Yes.
don't have to go.
Yes, yes. So, the end of the budget transfers, Andrew?
Finance Director Guzzo will come up. It's pretty straightforward. At the end of every year, we have line items that go into deficit for any number of reasons. Usually, it's not a very large number, but we prefer to let line items go negative so that we know what our costs were for, say, office supplies or, snow and ice, whatever. But by state law, we have to balance the budget at the end of the year. So budget line items that did not go into the negative are then used to offset that amount of money. In your packet, you have a chart that shows you the line items that went into deficit, the recommended lines we're going to transfer money from to balance them, and then the third column shows you a brief explanation of why that line went into deficit.
Okay.
Any questions, the finance director's here.
I'll just read the motion, and then we'll let's have the discussion. Move to approve the finance director request for budget transfers to balance functional shortfalls as required by Department of Revenue. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. What do you do? All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Guzzo on the, is it $86,194?
Which is the lowest number we've had since I've been here, so.
That's good.
It's fairly routine for this kind of stuff to happen.
And most of these deficits occur when from a department level, usually the last, say, 2 or 3 weeks of the fiscal year. So,
I always look at the outlier, and the outlier is the liability insurance premium. What happened there specifically?
gave it a-
Typically, we would know in advance what
We
what
bought
our
a
know.
$1 million fire truck.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, we looked into it and we found out one of the things that we don't budget when we do liability insurance, we have just been budgeting for the Meyer liability. So when we looked at it, we noticed we were not budgeting for the police liability. We were not budgeting for an audit that's done for what was the other one? Chubbs, which is for the police. We don't bond for the treasurer's office. We don't include that as part of the budget. And then there's a workers' comp audit that's done at the end of the year, and we don't budget for those. So we've been just basically budgeting for the basics. So when we did the research, we found that's really what the main driver has been every year. We have not budgeted for those three items. And they usually about $24,000.
did we this year? 19?
Fiscal 19, it is not budgeted.
It's not. Okay.
No.
So we can expect a similar number.
Well, a couple of things. One is we know what the number is, and in the entire benefits silo of money, we can make that adjustment during the year. It requires a town meeting vote if we want to go that route, or we can wait till next spring and do a transfer like
Yep.
this
Yep.
document shows.
And we've already started
It's a-
looking at things like that.
Yeah, it's a number we're
budget items
cognizant of
that
for
we
the
know
first
we
time.
have to address. For instance, we know the town clerk's budget, between the three budgets, it seems to be always off balance. And plus, when we're looking at cutting, she'll put it in and we end up taking it out. So we have to address those issues too.
Does anybody have any other specific questions about the
I have a very minor
transfer?
question.
Okay.
For the town clerk, it sounds silly, but the dues and memberships, it said that it wasn't budgeted at all, so it was $305. But according to the expenditure report, they spent $355. Did we cover the $50 somewhere else?
Yeah, but we're looking at the budget really, when you're in the package, you're looking at it by department.
Right. So,
That's why it's 305 versus 355, because that was really all, when you look at the total budget for that particular department, it's only $305 short. It was covered through other areas.
I'd have to look at the detail, but I believe what is happening there is there's more than one dues and membership. So perhaps they had $50 budgeted, paid one of the dues. They had another one that was $305 and put it into deficit.
okay.
As an example, I don't know the
Okay.
detail there.
No,
but
I mean, the key there is, there are issues like Dave mentioned on the insurance that we have to address. And one of the things we've been looking at this year, as I did this, is to look at the areas that we have not addressed in the past. And when we do the budget this year, we should address those and bring them up and say, what do we do to correct it?
And I realize like $50 is
I
nothing
know.
in the grand scheme of things. I was just trying to,
No, I don't take offense because I'm noted to be conservative, at times cheap, so, To me, $5,
$5 is $5. All right, cool. Any other questions about the budget?
No.
Transfers? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion? Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have the TA report?
yes.
There's two items added in the packet that were not in the PDF that's attached. They were added today. I'd like to call your attention to it. One of them is a resident has approached us about a significant donation to the town in exchange for the naming of a piece of town property. And we don't have an exact figure, but it is a big number. Something worth having the conversation about. So I've asked the person to go get more details, come back to us, and we'd likely put it on a future agenda for discussion here. The Board of Selectmen are responsible for the naming of town property, and they have a set of rules about it, but it's also your own policies. You don't have to follow those rules precisely, and if someone's given us a lot of money, that might be a reason to consider applying a different set of rules.
I say anytime anyone wants to give us a big chunk of money, they can name whatever they want.
Not only that, they're gonna fix the bridge.
So
Seems like a win.
The second item on there is, today there was a conference call with Moody's over the bonding. We approved a town meeting for the water and sewer borrowing. The call went very well. And within about a week, we're going to have the draft document. We review that, then they put it out on the street. And at your next meeting on July 31st, you will be signing the issue. So we will send you the draft documents when we receive them on Monday. Today's conference call was to answer questions like, why do you need this money? That sort of stuff.
On the first issue, for the next, whenever we're having the discussion relative to the donation, if we can have for our packet the actual policy that we approved.
Absolutely. This
Couple-
woman came in to see me today, and I
Yeah.
thought she was going to give me a check for $50 or something. It was a very different conversation than
Just a couple of years ago that we did it, so it shouldn't be
Yeah,
hard to.
it's not that bad.
6. So,
I guess there's a difference between naming, I don't know, I wonder what the terminology is when somebody wants to purchase naming rights, I guess, as opposed to us naming something for a veteran or something like that.
I'll reach out to legal and see if there's any restrictions on this or rules outside of our own policies.
We could change the policy
Sure.
to adapt it to.
As they say in the
Good call.
Pirates of the Caribbean, they're just guidelines.
Yeah, so, all right,
Assume as long as it's like
okay, sounds good.
PC, politically correct kind of name.
Anybody else have any other questions about the TA report for this week?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, Chairman's report, only just want to welcome Justine and Armin to the board, and look forward to working with you both, and also to congratulate Greg again, and welcome Greg aboard, and we look forward to working with you as well, Greg. So, thank you. And that's it for me.
I don't have anything. I would just echo your sentiments that it's going to be a great year working with all three of you.
Justine?
I look for same thing. I look forward to working with everyone. I'm really excited for this. So thanks for a fairly okay meeting. And welcome, Greg.
Yes.
And welcome, Laura.
David?
Same sentiments, obviously, but to everybody that's new, and Greg and Morrow, and you know. The one thing I wanted to comment on is for people who have not yet had the opportunity, and this is an annual thing, to go down to the community band concerts on Wednesday night. I was there on the 4th of July, and it was really crowded. And it was not only that, they did a fantastic job. They did the 1812 orchestra, and they had, or 1812 overture, and they had a thing acting as a cannon. Somebody was banging on something, but it really was well done. So for the public, anybody who has an opportunity to get down there and see it, I want to congratulate too the Cultural Council and the library and all of those who were involved in the concert that they had recently on a Sunday afternoon. I guess it was just last Sunday, was it? Or no, it couldn't have been 2 Sundays ago. And then also upcoming, something that we had approved is the band concert, the rock band concerts of Maynard guys and women that are going to be participating. And so it should be really good. 3 or 4 Friday nights in a row that they're going to be out there performing, and they've been rehearsing, and they rehearse in Everett or something like that. It's so they're putting a lot of time in it. They got set lists, they got everything. So it's going to be really exciting stuff. So something for people to look for weekend activities.
To add on to that, I think the first one is actually this Friday.
This Friday.
The Donner Party.
That's right. The Donner Party.
I think
Yeah,
it's Donner, yes. Like they're
there's a
not
story
eating them.
behind it. Something about some Western family or something. Donner family.
Family of reindeer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not the
I
reindeer.
was thinking the reindeer.
No.
All right.
Thank you.
First of all, look forward to working with all 4 of you. Should be exciting. Welcome, Greg, and congratulations, Mara. There's one thing that I want to bring up, and I just see if we could add that on to our agenda and our maybe next meeting, is in regards to some of the properties that I feel are considered public nuisance. If we could put something on the agenda for us to discuss those properties.
Okay. We good? Anybody else? That's it? All right. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? The next meeting is July 31st.
Yay.